All right. Episode 73.
Welcome, everyone. Let's talk about, straight into it, I think, today. Let's just not muck around as I muck around. We talk a lot about knees and hips and VMOs and glutes and glute medians and cores. One joint that we actually care about a lot, but we actually don't give enough attention in our content is the shoulder.
Yeah. And we, particularly the activation stuff. I think, the idea, I think it's now very well established that you should activate your glutes before integrating them, before loading. I think that idea is...
That's pretty spread now, yeah. I want to try and find, I'm going to challenge myself before this goes out. I'm going to try and find a paper that I saw an Instagram link to recently that was about squat performance or sprinting performance or jumping performance was improved literally with just doing glute, like squeeze and lift type Pilates type activation, the stuff we do in our warm-up. There's actually some scientific numbers saying it works. That's really cool. That's cool. Back on track though, I think that there's a huge area, especially for throwing, pitching, bowling, swimming athletes. There's a profound area for improvement just by getting your shoulder activation on point. And
I think throwers are, cricket players, baseballers are actually now really good at it. Swimmers are all over activating the shoulders.
Yep.
They're doing really well. But the area where it's probably not that well done is still in gyms. People aren't necessarily activating pre-lift because you want the shoulders to perform, because it's not just an anti-pathology thing.
Yeah,
it's not just fixing stuff. It's just making stuff like we don't need someone to have a hamstring problem before we make them activate their glutes.
Exactly. Yeah,
we want you to perform.
Yeah, once you jumping higher, running faster, more agile, more explosive. Same thing when it comes to upper body. You want to bench heavy weights, you want to do a bunch of push-ups, you want to be chinning really nicely, and also preventing overuse injuries at the same time, but also lifting heavier loads and creating more force.
How good are you at doing it? Because I'm rubbish at it.
My rotator cuff stuff?
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Mostly because I've got Davey doing it with his Project 100 bench stuff.
Do you think it'd be worse? It always falls off the list for me because I don't have any shoulder problems.
Yeah, I'm really lucky too. I've got pretty good shoulders. I think I hit 1.5 times a week in my 3 lifts.
I'm like once a month. I need to be much better. We should talk about why you need it and the I guess design limitations of the shoulder.
Yeah, let's talk about why the shoulder sucks and why it needs activation in the first place.
So the shoulder both sucks and is amazing.
Tell the engineer story. Tell the analogy, because this is a powerful metaphor.
So I don't know if I thought of this or something. No, I've got some comments. This isn't just a rip-off. I might have thought of this myself.
Yeah, it was by Kate too, wasn't it?
I guess, yeah. So my wife, Kate, is an aerospace engineer by training. So she's got an honours degree in aero, so she's a rocket scientist, technically. And she works in automotive these days. And so she's an engineer, and we'll often have conversations, and some of her stuff will inform how I think about stuff. And part of that is, they'll have meetings at Holden where you have a meeting about a part that you're designing, and I always thought to myself, imagine if you were designing the human body and you took
the team that designed all the bits showed up at a meeting together.
Yeah, and you've got a committee, and it's like, okay, Durham, you've designed the shoulder, and you plonk the shoulder down. Everyone's like, and you're like, it's a ball and socket joint.
And imagine you've just followed the guys who's the hip. It's like, look at this ball, it sits in there, it's nice and tight. And then you show up with that little...
And they're like, socket?
Yeah.
I'm doing air quotes, people who are just podcasting. Because it's a golf... Have we got one?
You got one right there. Yeah. It's a golf ball sitting on a golf tee. You've got maximum, is it 30% congruency? Yes. 25% is tiny. So massive humeral head ball sitting on this tiny glenoid fossa socket.
Joint congruency sounds fancy, but all it is just snugness.
How well the joint sits where it's supposed to.
So in the hip joint, the ball sits encased by a socket, so it has high congruency. And
the ankle joint sits nice and congruent, whereas the knee's not. It's kind of just
sitting on top
of each other, just held together by the ligaments. Yeah.
And so, this is obviously not an actual shoulder, but you can see this just the size of the head of the humerus, and that glenoid fossa is not much. So the bones itself don't.
Kind of in there. Yeah.
Google, don't just rely on that.
We'll put a photo up for those listening on podcast.
Yeah, nice. So it has low congruency, so it structurally doesn't have much.
And that's when we talk about congruency, we're talking about passive. So before the muscles have even been laid down, what level has the joint been stuck together by its ligaments, its cartilage, and the bone?
Yeah.
And in the shoulder's case, it's pretty pathetic.
It's not got a lot, and I mean the whole joint's really interesting. It's the if you look at the scapulothoracic joint, which is also, I think you've got to think of that as part of the shoulder joint.
The shoulder starts at the rib cage for sure.
Yeah, so that's where the scaps attach.
If the ribs are underneath the shoulder blade, yeah.
It's also that's the only joint that doesn't have any real ligamentous structure.
Technically not a joint. Some people will call it a pseudo joint. So if you want to get in the nitty gritty, joint, not joint, it's where two bones are
I think it's a joint,
articulating. Though. There's articulation there. It's very muscular though. So it's all muscular.
If you're thinking in terms of training, you've got to think of it as a joint.
For sure.
Yeah, but it's held. Levangie and Norkin, great physio text. We've got one. Yep, up there somewhere. Yeah,
cool. I'll link to that.
Really readable physio text for deconstructing functional anatomy yourself, I think. They actually kind of give it a bit of crap. There's actually a joke in there, and it's something along the lines of the scapulothoracic joint, which is primarily held together by gravity.
Gravity and serratus anterior.
Yeah. But anyway, so the joint itself, the bones don't offer a lot of stability and
back
competency.
to the glenohumeral joint, the actual shoulder joint.
Yeah. And what that means is it can do amazing things. Like it can do circumduction, it can do whirlies, it can move all around.
You can do a handstand, a bench press, a row. You can put your arms behind yourself.
You can do all sorts of
scratch
stuff.
your opposite chin. My brother can do this thing. It's weird where he puts his hand all the way around his face.
Who can do that?
All of them, I think.
Really?
They're all pretty floppy. So they can put their right arm around the left side of their face and come back onto the right side of their face. And they'll come back around to here.
No way.
Yeah. So
I can't even get to the middle of my chin.
Yeah, neither. I don't know how, but they can grab like this.
You're better than I am.
Yeah, still not very
I'm
good.
left side.
There you go.
I'm old.
So the shoulder is, what we're trying to get at with that, is the shoulder is pretty floppy.
Yeah.
It's got a lot.
It's huge range.
That lack of congruency is a trade-off in order to give you more mobility and more freedom of motion.
Yeah, and so what you then need is if you're going to put that shoulder, which has that wonderful mobility, if you're going to put it in situations where there's collisions, impact, where you're trying to hit people or they're trying to hit you, or you're just trying to throw objects repetitively,
really fast,
then you need every muscle around that area to be on point to provide stability, and that's where the rotator cuff comes in. So when people talk about an injury, I've hurt my rotator cuff. That's really important to have that strong and bulletproof. And obviously, if you've injured it, it's important. But I think that prehab, even though I'm a hypocrite with this, I think that prehab thing is really important. I'm actually doing a little bit of activation.
Should we talk about, I'd like to touch, while you talk about the rotator cuff, on why it actually turns off in the first place. So the rotator cuff, you've got four: sits, supra, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, and then subscapularis. Yep. They kind of form like a stocking-like effect where they spiral from the shoulder blade out around the joint. And so as you move the joint, they kind of twist and tighten to keep the ball in the socket.
I think of them like, if you're ever looking at a building site and they're loading some heavy thing on a crane, the crane's lifting, and you've got the guys around it just kind of moving the thing into position. I think of it like that. Like
doing the dance.
Yeah, like the rotate, like the shoulder. You want to do a thing. You want the humerus to go somewhere, and all the rotator cuff is doing is grabbing and just constantly keeping that
micro adjusting
to keep the ball in the socket, because the dance is keep the ball in the right spot so it doesn't grind or pop.
Yeah, nice. And so what happens though over time, and this comes back to all the posture stuff we talk about, is we spend a lot of time internally rotated at cars, at desks right now. And a lot of our sports are played forwards. And the problem is especially infraspinatus, but supra as well, they end up getting stretched out and they live in this constantly lengthened position because we're living here. And so pec minor gets really tight, the thoracic gets tight, and infra gets tight, but in a long position. It's called locked long, so it lays down trigger points and it becomes weak and inhibited in a lengthened position.
And then we go to the gym, and what there's levels of badness, but one example is you go to the gym, and what do you work on? You work on all the bits you can see. You do what I call the
guns.
This is courtesy of Kevin Gorgon. Hi Kev, if you're watching. The California workout: pecs, buys, anterior shoulders.
Yeah. So shoulder press, bench press, incline press, curls,
and it's just, everything is just pulling it over. And so that's obviously terrible, and we all scoff at those guys. But then you've got people who have a balanced program where they do it, because they're doing all pushing and no pulling. You've got to be pulling at least as much, if not more, than you're pushing. But even in more intelligent programming where you've got that ratio right, I think the balance can be right, but people still tend. I know that even in my own training, I grind my reps out on bench.
There's a bit more love and a bit more enthusiasm for working harder on pushing, isn't there?
And I think there's also something like, if you're benching, you hit that sticking point. You're like, I've hit a sticking point, but my God, I've got this. I will get through it. I find if you're doing like an inverted row, you hit a point. It's just like, it's
stopped. It's done.
It's like you're arm wrestling, and when you're arm wrestling with bench, you never give up. And yet with back, like, it hurts quite a bit.
No, half that'll do. Yeah, exactly. I think there's something about that to do with sarcomere lengths. I'm not going to get into that here, but I think there's also that fact
it's not just psychological.
You can see the weight going away, and there's a sarcomere length thing going on as well when it comes to length tension relationships. Makes it.
You know what? We
okay.
Do this.
So,
what do you think?
Your muscles.
Map it up.
Your muscles have a certain point at which they're the strongest.
Yes.
So we have a peak, and it's joint angles.
That's assuming that sliding filament theory is correct.
Yeah, it's still a theory, but let's just assume.
I love it. It's 2017.
And the sliding filaments, it's still
called a theory. Yeah.
Anyway, so you've got the sliding filaments inside the muscle. So when you combine there's a certain level of overlap that they have that allows peak force.
Yep.
You can't be too squashed up or bunched up. You can't be too lengthened out, otherwise you don't get the thing. That's why at Nordics you hit a point and all of a sudden you collapse.
Yeah.
That's why when you're curling, you get to a point where it's really hard in the middle, and then it gets easier again.
Yeah.
It's not just the sliding filaments and the sarcomeres, it's also the joint angles and your body, your position of gravity, blah, 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 whole bunch of stuff. But I think when we pull into a position of weakening sarcomere length tension relationship, whereas when we press, we're pressing into a favourable position.
Right.
And so by the time we're through the sticking point on a press, the sarcomeres are in their sweet spot, ready to go. And that means as you get to that point, the joint angles and gravity and all that sort of stuff then can take over. Whereas pulling, you're working into a poor position of sarcomeres at the same time that the joints are closing.
Why is
and
it into a
weaker.
poor? Because they're both shortening.
They're shortening, but also the joint angles are closing as well. Whereas when you press, the joint angles are opening.
Yes.
And so I don't know exactly. That's why I didn't want to do it. Thank you.
No, but I think it's good. It's interesting.
But that's kind of my theory is that yes, they're both shortening, but because the joint angles are opening versus closing, I think that's got something to do with it.
But whatever it is, if you're going to think about making the shoulder stronger, you've got to think locally in terms of rotator cuff work.
Rhomboids, serratus anterior, little guys like that.
But you've got to really think of your lower traps. You've got to think of the pulling muscle, not just the little guys stabilizing, but also the pulling muscle.
So let's talk about traps now as well. Not just all the trap, not just lower trap though, but middle and upper as well. Do you want to tell lats in there as well? Well, let's talk about upper traps. Let's talk about traps and particularly upper traps and how we were wrong for so long.
Well, I was wrong for much longer time. You're only wrong for a couple of years.
That's because I was still in high school.
So for a lot of people, they are stemming from it's the Janda concept.
Janda, the upper and lower cross syndrome, which I'll put a link to.
Yeah. So it's the idea that the average person is locked short through the pecs, short through the upper traps, and locked long through the muscles at the back, so they're up and over.
Yeah. Head drops forward, thoracic scaphoid. Yep.
And so I bought into the myth. I think it's a myth that was perpetuated that that upper trap is kind of the devil because it's pulling up and over and it's making stuff terrible. And you've just got to really focus on isolating lower trap.
And it's driving tension headaches and things like that.
Yeah. And a great physio friend of ours was talking to us about it. He's like, I just don't buy that. He said it should be a neutral position. Not elevated, not depressed,
just in the middle.
And he had me at neutral because we love neutral.
Such a nice word, yeah.
And because neutral means, in our sense, in the right spot, and it just made sense.
It means default setting, yeah.
Like where it should be. And his thing was that levator scap is actually the devil. And that's a little muscle. That's like the headache. If you ever get a massage and you've been having a headache, they hit that spot and it's like bang.
Oh,
yeah,
horrible.
Levator scap is the devil, and it actually gets really tight when upper trap isn't doing its job properly. So underactive.
Yeah, so you've got an inhibited upper trap full of trigger points that's not strong enough, and as a result, levator scap has to pick up the slack,
and it tightens up in a compensatory pattern in the same way that the adductor tightens up when the glute isn't working properly. I think it's really interesting. I think we did a disservice, and I reckon we were doing rowing we were doing it wrong for quite a while because that emphasis on just getting the lower, you weren't in the right spot.
And what you end up doing is you drive back into the lower traps and into the lats, and you get this imbalance where you sort of down at the opposite.
I think we're wrong. Yeah. And the thing is too, if you're training properly, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be doing chin-ups, and they are so much harder. You're going to tend to load yourself Oh, there's a ghost in the gym.
It's howling a breeze out there.
It is windy. You are going to... What was I? Oh, yeah, if you're training properly, you're going to tend to apply a lot more intensity to your chin-ups than your shoulder press. Most people tend not to go crazy heavy on shoulder press. And so you're going to have a situation where your training is actually biased anyway towards getting the lower traps really good. Yeah. So you don't need to be hammering the lower traps on your row because you're actually hitting them really hard on your chin-ups.
Yeah, with a good press scap there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So rotator cuff activation is really good. I think the open books, like a bit of TheraBand, shoulders tucked back, externally rotate. You can do that lying on your side.
And important of that, you don't want to go too wide.
No.
Because if you start going wide, it just becomes a shoulder blade squeeze, it becomes rhomboids and mid traps. You want to keep it pretty neutral so the arms end up parallel or just outside.
Yeah.
These ones work really well with isometric holds too.
Yeah.
People tend to, you see a lot of shoulder stuff, people tend to bounce in and out of position.
Yeah, doing it through range, I think, actually gives you so many opportunities. Sorry. I have this habit of leaning back, everyone, so apologies if I faded there, but Jacob just pulled me up on it. It's good, thank you. You're giving yourself opportunities. It's an awkward position to get into where you're nailing the angle, and so I think you're better off to just find that position and kind of camp out in it. Yeah. The other sort of pro-level trick is you can put something squashed between your elbow and your
roll
side.
Roll up a towel or a piece of cushion or something.
And that will engage the lat, which will actually switch off the deltoid, which means you're going to isolate the rotator cuff a little bit.
That one hurts if you do that properly. Squeeze something by your ribs and then try and do your open books. Much tougher.
So I think that's great. And if you're consistent with that, there's no doubt it'll help your benching, it'll help your throwing, it'll help your shoving. But you've got to also be really good at, I think, at rowing without momentum.
Yeah.
Actually...
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of reading in the last couple of months about power training and the idea of velocity and power and explosiveness when you lift. I don't think it applies to your rowing and your pulling stuff.
You got to row slow.
You got to row with control and with that pause at the end, so that you're not bouncing and momentuming your way into your reps.
Yeah, because if you row fast, what you're doing is you're letting the biceps really do a whole lot of work early, and then you're kind of coasting through those last...
Flicking your way through the end of the range, yeah.
Whereas I think... it's interesting. I'm pretty light. I'm 65 kilos, so I can chin and dip and inverted row pretty well. But I've been experimenting with doing a scaled back inverted row. So you've got your feet... Rather than your feet up on something, I've got my feet...
So your body's on like a 45-degree angle?
Yeah, so I've made the inverted row easier. Yeah. But doing it for more reps... and significantly slower and really grinding it out to the end. So I'm getting that really good shot. The shoulder blades touching each other and actually staying there for a little bit. And I think that's probably why I'm getting away with not doing the rotator cuff too. Because I think you can rotator cuff all you want, but if you don't have good scapular mechanics...
or good thoracic posture as well.
Which is another step back. If you don't have good thoracic strength, then rather scapular strength, then it's like the deck chairs on the Titanic. It's what is it? Firing a cannon out of a canoe.
Yeah, big credit to Eric Cressey for all this shoulder stuff. I think he's the person we've read the most when it comes to this stuff. But
it's really good.
His idea is brilliant, that you build the shoulder from the bottom up. So it starts from hip strength, glutes, core, lower back strength, and then it's thoracic posture and alignment, scapulo-thoracic rhythm, and then it's the rotator cuff, the deltoids, and things like that, and the pecs that sit on top of that.
And your point's really good, like the thoracic thing. If your thoracic's crazy tight, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good everything else is.
You can have the world's strongest and most supple rotator cuff in the world, but if your shoulder is starting from this position, it's already set up for an anterior dislocation. It's set up for grinding on your bicep tendon, for closing up the subacromial space above it.
And your scapular muscles, they just can't operate well because you're hunched and they're on stretch. They're in a bad spot.
Comes back to that sliding filament. Thank you for bringing that up. It comes back to that sarcomere idea that they're already pre-lengthened, so they're already out of their position of biomechanical advantage.
Yeah. So shoulder health and high performance. So you want to be able to hit people. You want to be able to be hit. You want to have bulletproof shoulders that can really be awesome. Number one is going to be thoracic back ball and cat camel.
Yep, I'll link our thoracic posture and neck posture videos.
And so those things, I mean, they make you feel better. They loosen the rusty bike chain that is your thoracic spine up. They make you a little bit taller. Never a bad thing.
Always handy.
And they create a lovely base for your shoulder blades to work off. And when your shoulder blades can work off that, they get strong. and then you've got a happy, healthy shoulder, and then you can have the rotator cuff strong within that. Like then you've built it in the right order.
And it's beautiful because if by the time you get to that step, you don't need as much rotator cuff activation like yourself, because you're seeing a good position.
Away with it.
It's already
doing its job.
It's not deactivating because of your posture, because it's already set.
Because people often say, "Oh, this is your activation." People are moving for thousands of years. They don't need to activate. It's like, well, yeah, people are moving for millions of years, really, but they weren't sitting on their phones for millions of years. They weren't sitting on their bums for millions of years.
Yeah.
Like
this lifestyle, the modern Western lifestyle we have, is so new and so inorganic, I suppose is a word.
We're spending so much time deactivating the muscles. Yep. Every time, because when you apply pressure, if you want to switch a muscle off, drop the elbow, apply pressure, hit a trigger point, release it off. That's switching off. So sitting we are right now deactivating our glutes.
Yeah.
And the same way with the shoulders. Like if you're always, they're switched off. Yeah.
Yeah, so those arguments of, well, we move naturally without activation. Yeah, but we didn't sit or be sedentary to the level we are currently back in those days. Back in those days, they would move for 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
So nothing was ever turning off.
And it's not to say you'd never sit down, but you wouldn't sit on a couch, and you wouldn't sit in a car, and you wouldn't sit at a desk. Like you were.
These people are also only living to 50 and 55 years old. So,
well, yeah.
So there's that as well. They're wearing their bodies out.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, to take away, so address the thoracic stuff. So get that mobility, the back ball stuff.
Yep.
Get the shoulder blades working really nicely. Attend to your rotator cuff, and then pull more than you're pushing. Both with total volume, which is what most smart programs do.
So more reps and sets of pulls and rows and chins and reverse flies.
I think the other trick is to try and attach more of your ego or whatever you've got to do to be more invested in being a badass at using the back. Like when I train, I'm like, I want it to burn. I want to feel it. Like, I think it can. You don't just pay it lip service.
Yeah.
You go, I've ticked the box. I've done
my 4 sets of 10 versus 3 sets of 10. Yeah. No, it's got to be 4 sets with some love and some passion.
Yeah. The only area I would a note of caution is with your chin ups. I think no one should ever do forced reps on chin ups.
Yeah, elbows.
Are you ready for audio world? Are you ready? Did you hear that? That's the sound. It's the sound of an elbow that's done too many chins. Yeah. You want to do is, I think chins are one where you grind them out, but you don't force out ugly reps. You just get.
I think you should keep.
I did that when I was younger.
Leave 2 to 3 in the tank on every set is a pretty good rule of thumb. So if you feel like you can do 12, do 9 or 10. If you feel like you can do 8, do 5 to 6.
I don't like that. I like that for you because you're mentally pretty tough. So what you've got in the tank is pretty accurate. But I think a lot of people would probably cut themselves short too. Like
they cut too short.
Yeah, I think for most people, because you're like a cold shower, crazy
I love
dude.
cold shower.
Yeah, like okay, if you're a cold shower, if you're that kind of person, follow Jacob's advice. But if you're a little more down the continuum, like down the end of the normal spectrum, I think probably like I always just leave 1 in the tank.
Yep.
I think, although maybe 1.5. Maybe given I've got, you all heard that elbow, man.
Yeah, maybe.
Who's
got the better elbow sound?
Cool. And I just include a bit of rowing in every workout.
Yeah, I row or fly, reverse fly every single workout.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
Thanks, guys. That was episode 73. There'll be a heap of show notes because we've made videos about a lot of those conversations. Cool. So we've got a shoulder stability one. We've got about rotator cuff, one about the push versus pull idea, the thoracic posture stuff. I'll link to Janda. I'll link to that physio text if you'll remind me after we finish here. Great. And as always, they're in the show notes. Thanks heaps, guys.
All right. Thanks, guys.